The first ever movie I was in, which I actually ended up cutting out my scene, was the movie Hachiko with Richard Gere. Um, I did my scene was was driving a car, and I was very nervous. I had signed up with a casting company, actually out of Rhode Island, called LDI Casting. Annie Mulhall runs it, and she cast me in the movie. And so my scene was for me to, I was to get in my car. I had to use my car in the scene. It was an orange Honda Accord, and so in my scene, I had to get in my car and drive across the street as Richard Gere crosses the street. Then I had to like, once he crosses the street, I had to drive my car past him as he crossed to the other side of the street. That was it. It was a very simple scene. So I remember the casting assistant telling me, okay, now Richard Gere's going to be crossing the street. Please do not hit him with your car. Whatever you do, wait, okay, we're going to give you a radio, and when you hear action, you take off with your car, but you don't take off fast. Now, I'm a nervous wreck because this is the first time I'm on a movie set. Even though I've always wanted to be on movies, I'm finally doing it. And all I see around me is a crowd of people, because it's, when people in the street see there's a movie shooting, they obviously want to see. So, bystanders, but the area had to be closed off because we had to do our scene. And so I'm a nervous wreck. This is in the middle of June. It's about 95 degrees outside. But I had to have my windows up because the scene is supposed to be in the winter. But they were shooting it in the summertime. So I had to have my windows up. And I had no AC in my car. It didn't work. So the only thing I had was a radio they gave me. And that's my cue on the radio when they say action. I had to pull out with my car as Richard Gere crosses the street. So we did a bunch of takes. I remember, I think literally on the first take, the assistant director was giving me directions. Okay, as soon as you pass the camera, you pull a U and you park on the other side of the street. I was so nervous. I ended up, on the first take, I ended up taking off nice and slow, and I ended up driving down the block down the street and then doing a U. I was supposed to drive just past the camera right there and do a U. So I'm hearing the director on the radio yelling at the assistant director, I thought you told him that you're supposed to turn around right there. What is that man in the orange car doing? She's yelling at the top of her lungs at the important assistant director because they're the ones that kind of, if you mess, as a background extra in a movie, if you kind of do something they don't want you to do, it's the assistant director that gets yelled at because they're the ones that give you direction. So the director, it basically comes down on the assistants, so that's usually how so she's getting chewed out because she gave me the right directions, but I was so nervous. I drive down a block and then I do a U and pull up and I ended up coming back. So that was the first take. So I'm a nervous wreck. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna get thrown off set. I can't follow direction. I'm such an idiot. I'm like, what am I doing? Okay, so the next 2 or 3 takes was fine. I ended up doing what they told me, right past the camera, do a U-turn and park on the other side of the street. But here comes the big one. On one of the takes, I took off. I ended up taking off too slow. Richard Gere, obviously in the scene, he's supposed to walk across the street, and then I'm supposed to drive. Well, I took off too slow. Richard Gere gets impatient, and he ends up taking off, walking across the street, and end up taking off too slow, and boom. But I was driving fast enough where he ends up in front of my car, and I had to slam on my brakes, and he's like, ah! I'm like, I'm going good. I had to slam, and so he's standing in the middle of the street staring at me, and I'm thinking I'm going to get yelled at by him. Like, you idiot, what are you doing? You almost hit me. He actually seemed like a very nice guy. He just waved me by. He goes, okay. So I drove past and saw, okay, I'm finally saying to myself in the car, I'm going to get thrown off this movie. I almost just killed Richard Gere. I'm going to get thrown off the movie. Oh my goodness. So I'm coming back to the assistant director when I pull out to the other side of the street. I'm saying, I'm so sorry. I'm going to get thrown off the movie. And no, don't worry about it. This happens all the time. People just get nervous. So I'm like, whew. And then we ended up doing a few more takes. I got the takes right. I didn't hit Richard Gere. and that was my scene for the day. And I made $50 for that day. It was, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was the laughing stock of the whole movie set. And a couple of the other extras that were in car scenes, they were like laughing at me. I'm like, oh man, you did too much, man. I can't believe you almost hit Richard Gere. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so that is my first movie experience.